Welcome to the Drip Matrix. Why do you need to audit your energy? It's such a great question to ask yourself, and it's such a great question to reflect on. Something that Dan Martell in his book Buy Back Your Time, specifically in chapter 2, has made me reflect on. And he does this very beautifully with the Drip Matrix. So the Drip Matrix is going to be a quadrant of a timeline with money and energy, putting them in different quads and realizing where your time is spent and how you can categorize it, hence auditing your energy. So when you see Dan Martell talking about audit your energy, this is what he's referring to. And I just wanted to go over on the screen just like a couple of key things that I found in the chapter in the book. Get the book if you haven't. It is such a great read. You should be able to see the screen now. So I do want to go over the chapter, just the key highlights of what I found useful in this chapter 2, and just dive deep into the knowledge and the principles that Dan puts into here. So a couple highlights that I got from chapter 2. It does go over the drip matrix here, which I'll show you in a chart shortly. But I just wanted to start you off with 2 quotes that I truly loved from this chapter. Is successful people don't do what they love because they're rich. They're rich because they learn to do what they love and only what they love. And another way I think where he got this from was said beautifully by Stephen Covey. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Super simple. Love it. So if you have the audio version, which I do recommend for you to get both the physical and the audio version, you'll get some couple little inside snippets with the buyback rules and step into the arena. I don't want to go over that here. I do want to just focus on the drip matrix. So let's go to the main thing. Welcome to the drip matrix. So we're going to nerd out here and go deep into each quadrant, and I'm going to hopefully do my best part in explaining how this works. So with any quadrant, you're going to have an axis. So an axis is going to be zeroed out. So here on the bottom left, 0, just think of a number, and I should put numbers on here. That would make sense. And then the closest that you get to this lightning bolt here is energy. So the more energy, the more to the right it'll be. Same for the money symbol. So the more money you make, the furthest away from 0 you are. So the higher you go to money, the more money you make, the closer you get to the lightning bolt, the more energy you have. The drip matrix is pretty much categorizing both money and also energy. We'll start with the bottom right. So the bottom right is going to be your investment quadrant. The investment quadrant is going to be a lot of energy, but not enough money. It's the furthest away from this dollar sign, which makes it a $1 sign. And it's the closest to the right-hand side where it has a lot of energy, but not the most amount of energy. We'll go over production later. So we'll start here on the right-hand side. So what fits in the investment quadrant? So investment quadrants are gonna be stuff that lights you up, but it doesn't bring in the money. So these are things like books, podcasts, lunch with a friend, hobbies, health, faith, something that's vital to creativity, something that just time passes whenever you do this type of activity. So some examples in my life, some things that light me up are going to be books, are going to be podcasts. I love consuming a lot of the self-help items that are out there, business books. Going to lunch with friends, going to lunch with my wife, that lights me up. And honestly, some of the items are going to stay investments forever. They don't transition to any other quadrant. That's actually a good point. So sometimes an item within a quadrant can actually move over to another quad. And that is possible through maybe upgrading your thinking, upgrading what you pay for it, upgrading how it gets paid. So there's a lot of variations here. But in the investment quadrant itself, a lot of the things kind of do just stay here. So for example, a hobby can be something that moves over to maybe a production where I like to make keyboards. So this is a good example. And maybe me making keyboards over and over as a hobby, I find a way to make money off of this and then it becomes a production. That's a good example of something elevating from an investment piece. Something that stays an investment, it could be just a hobby. So for me, something that stands out to me here is going to be tennis. Like, I love playing tennis, but I don't see myself making money from it or treating it in a way that will generate income. So that's an example for something that would just stay in the investment quadrant. Hopefully that makes sense for the investment quad. So the furthest right, high energy, low money, that's the investments. And there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be put into here. Shiny object syndrome for sure fits into this as far as like something that you feel like is new. Most of the time, those things do cost money to do, but doesn't produce income, but it does light you up. All right, so let's move over to the left-hand side, which is going to be this delegation. So delegation is going to be low on the energy side, but it's still going to be higher up on the money side. Why is that? Because most of the time, these items are just lower task items that doesn't cost a lot to do or for someone to take over, if that makes sense. So in delegation, a lot of the admin work actually does live here. So admins, bills and emails, those kind of stuff, day-to-day ops to make sure things are running on the delegation side. These ones you want to transfer as soon as possible. This is where the audit, transfer, and fill portion comes into, where Dan Martell talks about like how to make sure you incorporate this drip matrix into your auditing. This is where you want to make sure you focus on. Delegation is very crucial to making sure that you're buying back your time. So in this delegation, after you're done auditing, transferring, and filling these roles over to another team member, it starts to give you time to reinvest into other aspects, maybe more into the investment quadrant, keep you focused on more of the production quadrant, and it gives you time and space to think more. Delegation. Get that off your plate ASAP. Next one is going to be a replacement. So this is more higher on the monetary value. So this is more money generation quadrant, but doesn't give you a lot of energy. It doesn't drain you 100% like a delegation quadrant does, but it does drain you, and you don't really thrive in this quadrant. Dan talks about this being a pitfall quadrant. So a good example here is I could be great at accounting, but I don't like doing accounting, if that makes sense. I know the principles, I know how to track, I know to make the sheets, I'm great at crafting it. But my pitfall is when I do it, I dread it, and it takes me so long to complete it. That is a pitfall. The main reason why it's a pitfall is typically these two quotes. I can't afford it, and no one does it right. In my scenario, it's more I can't afford it because, as we all know, bookkeeping, accounting, CPA does cost a decent amount of money, and that's why this replacement is here on the top left. It costs more money to do, so you doing it is technically saving you money, and you do have to do a lot of these roles, but that's why it's on the top left and not on the bottom left where delegation is. Delegation doesn't cost as much to replace. Those ones you do ASAP, but as you replace those, you want to start thinking about the replacement quadrant, things that you are good at but don't like doing, and it does cost more money to replace. Tackling this is going to be one of the hardest things to do and one of the most fulfilling things to do. Awesome. Hopefully that makes sense. The goal is to delegate as much as possible, as soon as possible. Then the next step is to eliminate the replacement quadrant of what you're doing onto other people that are excellent at that key role that you feel like you can't hand off. Finally, let's get to the production quadrant, which is the top right. This is where we want to be at as much as possible and try to stay here or establish and realize what tasks that we can do that fit into this role that we love doing, that generates money, and that we can keep doing sustainably. This is the highest energy that you can get, and this is also the most income that is produced as well. So true freedom is what Dan Martell talks about this production quadrant being. This is something that we do the ATF, the audit, transfer, fill, the buyback loop to get us into this production quadrant as much as possible. And when you spend time here, you realize life is fun. Life just becomes not what you can do, how much you can make, but also how much you can serve as well. And it's a beautiful space to be in. And this is where that quote beautifully fits in. Successful people don't do what they love because they're rich. They're rich because they learn to do what they love. And this is what he's talking about. Just staying in the production quadrant, doing what you love. It's like in the investment quadrant where the things that you do, the day just goes by. But in this quadrant, this is where you're also producing the most amount of money. That's super important. Why? Because the more money we can make, the more we can get delegation completed. And the more delegation we can get completed, the more money we'll make and stay in production. The more money we're making again in production, the more we can replace and get the replacement quadrant out of the way as well. It's a full cycle. Production, stay there as much as possible. Fill in some investment times during your week to just light you up. Delegate as much as you can ASAP. And then as you're staying in the production quadrant, making the money, replacing the replacement quadrant of items, tasks that you can hand off to people who are excellent in that role. So I appreciate you spending the time. Hopefully this drip matrix made sense. Put in the comments below if there's something that wasn't explained well, or if I just said something that just was stupid. Hopefully I did the drip matrix some justice, explaining what investment, delegation, replacement, production is. Now you should know how to audit your energy, kind of like what rises up to the top, what you feel the most aligned to, but also at the same time, as a bonus, knowing what the monetary value of each task is as well. So thanks for sticking on to the very end. I'll catch you later, nerds.